Hey everyone, in this video we're going to do another short Latin story. Now this is about Phocion, right? And this story comes from Easy Latin Stories for Beginners from George L. Bennett. Now if you've seen a bunch of other videos in this series, you know who Bennett is, right? And kind of the stories he does. If this is your first time experiencing any of the stories that Bennett wrote, he does a great job of in his text of kind of making stories that, again, he thought were kind of easy for beginners. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but they have to do with history or morals, sometimes mythology. So they're a really great way to kind of break away from a traditional Latin textbook or curriculum and just see something completely different. They're very short. They're pretty manageable. It's just another way to read something different, maybe spark your interest to go learn something new, right, that you don't normally see. So like I said, this video is about Phocion, the Athenian statesman. I believe he's in the 4th century BCE. So his story is really interesting, and I'd recommend that you look him up. There's a bunch of different ways you could do that, but he's kind of fascinating to me anyway because he's a staunch opponent of Alexander the Great, who is going to play a role in this story. And he's known as the Good, right? And the reason, or part of the reason that he got that nickname is because of his very frugal lifestyle, right? So as a politician and a statesman, he probably could have been pretty wealthy, or if he wanted to, but it seems like he was more about the frugal lifestyle, right? Not really going into it for the money, which seems to kind of go against his role as a politician, and it factors into the story you're seeing here from Bennett. So before we dive too far into it, I will read you the story completely in Latin just so you have a chance to hear it. But I would encourage you, if you're a student, I would pick this story up, at least with my students. I usually give it to my Latin 2 or 3 students. Like I said before, what Bennett is calling easy Latin stories, I wouldn't necessarily think of as easy for my students anyway. So it kind of depends on where you are. A lot of these stories, particularly in the beginning, involve things like subjunctive mood, which we just don't really cover until we get a little further past Latin 1. So wherever you are, maybe in that Latin 2 or 3 range, that's probably a good place to try this out. But I would recommend that you pre-read it, right? Try to make a little vocab list if you need it. Just see what the story's about and try to read it aloud. If you can find a classmate to read it to and have them read it back to you, you can work on your speaking, your pronunciation, and when they read it back to you, you're working on your listening. Those are really great skills that you never want to turn off because it'll help you understand the Latin really well. The other thing you could do, I know these are very short stories, but again, anytime you read Latin, I always encourage the read and reread method. So maybe you read through it once, you write down any words or problem areas you have, then go look them up. And once you feel like you have it under control, read the story again. And you keep repeating that process over and over again until you're able to read through this without needing any help. You don't need to look up any vocab or grammar or anything like that, and you can understand what it's about. That's how you know you're in a pretty good place. Okay, so if you haven't done that, pause the video, go go work on that first. But otherwise, let's dive in. So the story goes like this: you have Phocion Atheniensis pauper erat. Olim centum talentis ab Alexandro Macedonum rege misos dixit. Cur mihi tantum pecuniae dare vis? Respondit legatus. Alexander te unum omnium Atheniensium bonum virum existimat. Tum Phocion inquit. Ofer pecuniam bonus esse malo. Okay, so let's pause the video there. Again, if you want to repeat it, my pronunciation is never anything spectacular, but at least it gives you a chance to hear the story from start to finish. And now if you want to go and listen to it again or work on it on your own with a classmate, like I said, feel free, right? But try to just at least hear the story and read it aloud once. Okay, so again, we start with this. Let's dive in. You have Phocion Atheniensis pauper erat, right? So you're saying Phocion, right? And remember in Latin that C is like a K. Particularly we have the Greek names. It definitely would have been a K. Okay, so he was a pauper. He was a poor man, a poor Athenian man. You can either say Phocion the Athenian was a poor man, or you could say like Phocion was a poor Athenian man, a pauper, if you will. Even though, like I said, he is a statesman, right? But he has this reputation of being frugal, not necessarily like a poor nobody, right? He is someone important. Then you have olim, right? So once, or once upon a time. And you have centum talentis ab Alexandro misit. So you have that ablative absolute there of talenti, or well, centum talentis misit. So having been sent 100 talents. So now, if you don't know this, a talent is a unit of measuring money, right? I think it's based on weight, if I remember right. Don't quote me on that. You can look it up. But it's amount of money, a talent, okay? So 100 talents is a lot of money, right? So having been sent 100 talents by Alexander, right? Ab Alexandra, right? There's your ob telling you who's doing the passive here. By Alexander, the rege Macedonum, right? The king of Macedon. So this is Alexander the Great. So once, having been sent all this, he said, right? And there's a quote. So he said, why do you want to give, right? Dare vis, it's a complementary infinitive. Why do you want to give to me so much money? Tantum pecunia, right? So he says, why are you giving me all this money, Alexander? Then you have respondit legatus, right? So the legate or the envoy really is what it means, response. So it's not Alexander himself, it's the messenger, right? So the messenger responded, and he says, Alexander te unum omnium Atheniensium bonum virum existimat. So he's saying Alexander, right? He thinks or kind of judges, right? Existimat, right there. So judges or thinks that you, right? Te, you are one of all the Athenians, right? Unum omnium Atheniensium. You are one of the bonum virum, the one good man, right? So he says he thinks you are the one good man of all the Athenians, right? And again, it's kind of a play on the fact that Phocion's nickname is the good, right? So Alexander's basically bribing him here. And then you have the witty response from Phocion, right? So you have tum Phocion inquit, right? So then Phocion says, and he says, aufer pecuniam, right? Take away the money, okay? Bonus esse malo. So he says, take away the money. I prefer malo. I prefer to be good. Okay, to be bonus. And again, this is a play on the fact that he's known as Phocion the Good, right? That's his reputation. Okay, so it's a very short story, and hopefully you're able to translate that without too much trouble, right? So this one isn't bad in terms of like advanced grammar. So hopefully you're able to read that pretty well. But again, if you have any problem areas, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'll happily explain the translation or anything you need. But hopefully this sparks your interest, right? If you're into sort of Greek history, Alexander the Great, things like that, feel free to go look this up. I'm sure you could find, even something like Wikipedia. I'm sure you could find a lot about Phocion just to spark your interest, and hopefully you learn something new. Okay, good luck with it.